Let's see.
Everybody
here.
who's on the TikTok, we're going to do an interview here with Conversations Official.
Yeah,
Just
super
trying
official.
to get them to
I should have
get
made it Conversation super official.
super official.
That would have been the way to go. That would have been the way to go. Hi, my name's leowt, and you have found your way to the Conversations podcast. Conversations exist to create spiritually minded conversations about life. We desire to create safe space for dialogue and community. We desire to come together regularly and intentionally to generate conversations about life, belief, and the intersection of the two.
Go ahead.
Everyone
I'll
is welcome at the conversation. All right, friends, it is Leo WT. I am here with Rocky. We are here for Conversations. It is part 2 of my 3-peat weekend, where we are just blowing up your feed with good news that you might not have heard before. And if you had, well, then let's go ahead and signal boost this. So I'm going to be coming at you in audio form and YouTube form and the full video format, but Rocky and I are trying some multi-stream situations here going on. So we're coming at you in just slightly different format. So I am Leo WT. For those of you who don't know or might be tuning into Conversations the first time, I'm a non-binary human who happens to be a hairdresser, a seminarian, and someone who grew up in a conservative Christian background, but now understands that I am non-binary. And for me, where I've come to, that's not a rub. So we're going to be talking with Rocky because she is actually one of the filmmakers behind a project called 1946, which is a documentary about when the word homosexuality became a part of the Bible. So something that not a lot of people know is that homosexuality, the word, was not actually in the Bible until, as the name of the film would suggest, 1946. So Rocky is putting together an all-star cast and crew. Mary Lambert is the composer of the music for the film. We love Mary Lambert. We love some queers. You know what I mean? All up in there. And so I'm going to let Rocky introduce herself because her perspective and what brought her to this work is actually pretty interesting and exciting in and of itself. So we're going to let Rocky introduce herself, maybe give us a quick overview of some work she's done in the past and what brought her to this project, and then we're going to roll on from there.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
Yeah, my name is Rocky. I'm the director of 1946, the mistranslation that shifted culture. I do have a film background. I have been working in the film industry for over 20 years in a lot of different perspectives and, arenas, but primarily as a production designer and in the art department. And then also have done a lot of producing. But I'm also a member of the Alphabet Mafia. I'm an L, big old L. And I'm also a preacher's kid. So, being LGBTQ and Christian doesn't really mix. And so once my parents suspected I was gay, my dad read my diary, and, the rest is history. 20 years of just craziness and him taking me to, loved one out and giving me pamphlets on the slippery slope of gay marriage and, just all that kind of noise, which isn't really healthy. So as you can imagine, I left home. And then obviously within those 20 years, we've had some time to try to, he loves the sinner, hate the sin. And I'm like, but I just want to be in your life. How do we navigate this?
Absolutely.
And so, coming from that background, fast forward 20 years when I'm living in Los Angeles, I find myself in a progressive church. I realize this church, as much as they'll let a gay person come in, I'm still not equal in this space. And I started getting super vocal about it because welcome but not equal is not what the gospel or what this whole thing should be. And regardless, though, it just started really setting me on this path, which led me to find affirming churches. I literally felt like I was living in a rock. I had no idea. And then Christians, I literally had no idea gay Christians existed.
No idea.
So that led me to, Kathy Baldock, which led me to learning Malakoi and Arsenicoitai, which led me to learn of the conjoining of the two words, that led to this horrible mistranslation and now the creation of this film. So that's kind of it in short. So once I learned of that and having had these verses and be used against me, I immediately turned my professional career into an opportunity to turn this into a piece that can be seen all over the world and help create real change for our society.
Yeah. I'm so there's so much that I could unpack just in what you said already. But one thing that you said that resonated with me was I was also a pastor's kid.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, right. I like to refer to myself as someone who double fisted the Kool-Aid. Like I was in it to win it. I was trying to be the best. Like one time my little brother, who's one of my favorite humans, he looked at me and he was like, you were always so good and I could never live up to that. So I went the opposite direction. But what's funny is that in all of that, my sense of worth and my sense of calling was directly challenged by my coming out. And up until that point, I was so evangelical and conservative, I didn't know I was evangelical and conservative. And
Wow.
so,
Yeah.
like, when you said you found an affirming church, like, I remember the moment that I realized my church wasn't affirming,
Right.
despite the
Right.
good people that were in it. You know what I
Right.
mean? How did you, so what drew you or continued to draw you towards Christianity despite that negative experience you had, especially with your dad?
Well, to be honest with you, at that point, it was a girl. It was a girl that I was dating that was like,
It's always a
I'm a
girl.
Christian and I go to church. And I was like, what?
Uh,
And I'm like, well, I guess we're going to church on Sunday, like, oh my
Mhm.
gosh, what is this about? And then I
Yeah.
hadn't been in a church in 20 years.
Yeah.
So that's another reason why I was just so, just naive to
Yeah.
all of it. And then even the bigger problem of the teaching of the traditional teaching of the church that
Absolutely.
really is not that old,
Yeah.
and has just really has catastrophic effects on our society, especially in politics. And we can see
Yeah.
that with the merger of the Republican Party and the conservative
Mhm.
Christians in the
Mhm.
80s,
Yep.
and now we see what's happening in our nation with
Yep.
nationalism and Trumpism. So
Yep.
it's very
Yeah.
dangerous. And but yeah, I didn't even realize my church was like that. And my parents are good people. My family, they're good people. Like they
Yeah.
really do feel they're sincere in what they're doing. It's
Yeah.
again, it's misguidance from the church and bad teaching of the church. They don't know any better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is that it's the translation of a couple words. And so I always get this argument. I don't really like to fight on Facebook because I am beyond apologetics. For those of you who might not have grown up in the conservative Christian world, apologetics is a whole field where Christianity seeks to bolster its own claims. I was very interested in that when I was young. And I've just moved away from that because you know what? Like I am queer. I don't need to prove anything to anybody. But when I first started coming out, it really blew my mind when I realized there's 31,000 plus Bible verses in the Bible. Only 7 can be construed. Hear that? Construed to
Right.
talk about homosexuality. And I had no idea. Like, I
Yeah.
just thought it was this thing that was innate out there in the universe.
Yeah, it's crazy. It actually goes up to 9 verses throughout history where they use the word homosexual.
All right.
And then, but the 6 and 7, I would say the 7th is probably the Jude verse,
Mhm.
but the main
Yes.
6 are
Yep.
what we're going to be focusing on in our film.
Yep.
But either way, it's just, yeah, when you look at the comparison, but besides that one mistranslation that we're talking about, which condemns a group of people as opposed to an act, which is very
Mhm.
obvious, and we'll be able to
Yep.
show all the verses, what they mean. This is one of many mistranslations. The Bible has been translated into multiple languages all over the world, and so when you do that, things absolutely get lost in translation. That
Yeah.
doesn't mean that it's bad or good. And we can also show some of it is accidental, some of it is malicious. There's
Mhm.
absolutely sometimes agenda in play. And
Absolutely.
so our researchers have done a tremendous job to really trace all of it. And they've gone to all of the archives of all of the notes of all of the translation teams from the first in the 46 New Testament RSV to the 52 New Testament RSV to the 3 translations in the 70s that used the RSV as their root Bible, trying to make their modern English version of the Bible. And then we start tracing malice from the late 70s to the 80s, where the church literally doubles down in the footnotes saying it's consensual acts. It's really just it's amazing work that these researchers done, and I hope that it really sheds a lot of light on a lot of things. So.
And I really liked I grew up with the NIV Bible. What just out of curiosity, is that what your dad preached out of mostly?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, so I got the the King James Bible, New King James in the 90s. I'm aging myself now, when I was like, in high school. And and then we did switch to the NIV. I think now they're ESV, But the NIV, which was published in 1978, is the most egregious of the three Bibles in the 70s, and put the word homosexual in 6 different verses.
So I wanted to bring that up because I think amongst, like, in my upbringing, NIV was the most common, and I think that is the one that I see the most used, other than King James.
It is, absolutely.
Just in my experience. So I use the RSV for seminary, but
interesting.
Yes, because apparently it's one of the more accurate translations.
100%.
But then you have the people that made the RSV literally saying 70 years after they made it, they're like, we made a translation error, but the damage had kind of already been done. You know what I mean? It was already out there in the ether.
Nobody was even talking about it. Nobody even knew. There was no internet. There was no communication amongst all the translation teams. Nobody even cared. So what happened was, the RSV was the first modern English Bible post the King James, 1611 version. And so once it was published, of course, everybody was looking at it. It was a big deal. And the church they were in uproars of things because it was so well translated. They did things like they called Mary a young woman. And the church was like, whoa, you took the virginity of Mary away. And we're like, no, we didn't, because in Matthew, she's clearly a virgin, because she tells the angel she's never been with a man. But I guess you can't be a young woman and a virgin at the same time.
Apparently
not. That's why these other American publishing companies were like, we're going to make our own version of the Bible. You can't take the virginity of Mary away. That's where it becomes agenda. And nobody was even looking at this homosexual thing. Another thing to consider is, when this mistranslation happened, they were first written in the 30s for the 46 release. So the work was done in the early 30s. And homosexuals, it was homosexual vices. It was literally like homosexual rape. And homosexual was considered a rapist. That's what the definition of it was. So the definition of homosexual has changed over time.
Yes.
And that's another important factor. And again, it's all in the letters that were found at Yale University. It's completely all documented.
Yeah, so let me bring this up. So there's an interesting convergence here of your personal story and the story of the film, which is actually why I was seeking to speak to you first. I'm trying to get everybody else on here eventually, but I was trying to hit up you first because I found your story particularly interesting here. When they went, so Kathy is one of the researchers, and was the other? There was 2,
Ed.
right? Ed, okay. And so basically, what happened with, I believe it was the NIV Bible, is like no one had looked at the translation notes, right? Like they were sitting there untouched, basically.
Yeah, for most of these archives, for sure, nobody had looked at them. But specifically in the RSV, Ed and Kathy were like calling Yale, freaking out, like, "Are you sure that we can get in? Are you sure?" Like, Dr. Michael Brown's not going to be there, or, other people who write against the LGBTQ community aren't going to be looking at these archives to get to the bottom of the root of it, And they laughed at them. They're like, nobody's checked this stuff out in years. And you could literally, they literally were opening envelopes that had been sealed since the 60s. And people are writing books that then lead people to kill themselves because they believe that they're this great abomination, and nobody cared enough to even go back and look.
To check the notes. Yep. No one checked the tape.
And again, so as they go and look through all this history, no one's even talking about it. These letters were noted. The only people that knew about them were the 22 people in the translation committee. That's it.
Wow.
And the man who wrote the letter. Yep.
That's so wild to me that you got a committee of 22 people that are willing to issue a translation. All white men. All white men. Let us not forget that. That are willing to issue a translation that literally it's a death knell for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, whether they knew it, that they were like feeling this internal dialogue with themselves, or whether they were feeling external pressure, like this is a thing that caused people to kill themselves, or for people to kill other people.
Correct.
It's a death. It was a death sentence essentially, and no one checked the tape.
Correct.
No one checked the tape.
Exactly. They had the answer, and you know why? Because it's so easy, and Christianity is set up to other. And so the LGBTQ community is the next in line of a long list of others. And so as soon as you have the finger to point, and it's not pointing on you anymore, that becomes easy. So nobody cares. No one cared enough, you know?
Yes.
So, and then they'll say, well, you know, of course you're queer, so of course you're going to look and you're going to see something differently. I'm sorry, our allies see it too. And there are many allies with us, and they are loud and they are proud, and we are going to join our voices together.
Absolutely.
And it's history. It's
Yeah.
undeniable. You know, it's facts. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's just
And
about presenting the
there are
information
people
well. Yeah.
there are people with PhDs, with people who have studied up to that level in terms of translation of Greek and Hebrew and even Aramaic, because newsflash, Greek and Hebrew were not even the original original language, right? And so there are people with, I'm not saying you have to have a degree to know, like in general, in life. That's not a thing. But in this case, this is a scholarly pursuit that
100%.
could and will change whole lives, and hopefully we can begin to repair some of the systemic fallout, because there is so much that has happened as a cascading effect from that mistranslation to where evangelical pastors will stand up and say, you know what I mean, you're an abomination and we love you but we hate the sin. Well, newsflash, bro, I'm gay even if I'm not having sex with someone of the same gender as me. I'm still gay.
Absolutely.
So you can't just say love the sin or hate the sin, because being gay is not an action. It's an orientation.
Whole, like, we're born into original sin, and James Dobson introducing like babies are born into sin, and then the way that parents have scolded their children over the years, it's just insane.
It is.
You're scolding a 2-year-old like they're the fucking devil.
Yeah, that's what you're doing.
It's unbelievable to me.
Yeah, trying to discipline the sin out of your 2-year-old, it's crazy. And so many of these issues are issues that have stemmed from translation situations here,
and
right?
It's also just bad church teaching.
Yeah,
it's men sitting in a room making decisions about church law and doctrine. It is not biblical.
Yep.
You know, and when you look at the greatest commandments of all, and you look at how the church acts, I don't see Jesus in that.
Absolutely.
So this has been a poison that has been, you know, for the last couple centuries in our church doctrine.
Yeah, for a while it has been absolutely poisoning people, to the point where I'm not sure if you've heard of Kristen Kobe-Dumais, but she is a historian. She works at I'm forgetting, Calvin University, and she wrote a book called Jesus and John Wayne, which talks about the history of the evangelical church. And what happens in that is she talks about these distinct cultural decisions that were made, because make no mistake, evangelicalism is a culture. And so this culture of evangelicalism latched on to these mistranslations and have built up whole markets around being ex-gay, around being, you know, pray the gay away, around being heteronormative, around the idea of original sin. And there's a whole culture that came out to marginalize people. And for me, that's the culture I came out of. I actually don't have an ethnic background that I know of. It's out there, obviously, but my family doesn't talk about it. My closest experience with ethnicity is conservative evangelicalism. And my whole childhood, I was taught in the subtext that I was wrong and that I was bad. And how do you, like, this when I saw this documentary coming up, I was like, this is going to change everything.
Thank you.
Everything. I would love to, for a second. Also, I'm gonna need a link if there's sweatshirts available.
Yeah, definitely. You guys gotta get some merch.
Yeah, I gotta do it. I'll be buying like a couple, one for every day of the week.
Nice. All of our now we have the linked tree. So you just click the one link and it'll take you everywhere. But there's one that says merch in there.
Perfect. Yeah. I'll have to check that out, and we'll get that in the show notes later too.
Thank you.
Would you mind telling us a little bit more about the experiences that you've had with your father and how that's, going to come out in the film, and just as much as you're comfortable sharing, but a little bit more in depth, and kind of what brings you personally to the place where you are right now, you know?
Yeah, so when I first learned of the mistranslation, I actually was in a Kathy Baldock conference with my mother and my father, listening to Kathy talk about patriarchy, penetration, and procreation. In, you know, more times than you want to hear in 6 hours sitting next to mom.
More times than any lesbian wants to hear those words.
Exactly. And so, you know, we both had a different reaction to the research. My reaction has led me to drop everything to tell this story. And his reaction led him to now doubling down on writing a book on why homosexuality is a sin. And so he then agreed to be in our movie. And I took him to the Reformation Project, where he got to meet Justin Lee and Matthew Vines, and he's already met Kathy and Ed and some other people. And he let them all know that he's going to quote him in his book, which is, but he showed up. And he agreed to be interviewed in our movie. So we're going to give him his authentic voice, because that's the proper thing to do. Again, he's not a bad guy. He just believes he's dogmatic, and so we're going to give him an opportunity to share his story. But we try to now, we just don't talk about anything. It's hard to have a relationship, you go to dinner and there's only so many times you can talk about the weather, but we do the best we can, and I'm glad that he's a part of the story. So we'll see. We'll see when his book comes out.
I definitely, I'm curious to know the publication schedule of that, because I'm about to have to read it. But I had a similar somewhat experience in the fact that my dad was a pastor, and then I was double fisting the Kool-Aid. But when I came out, there was this tension that I felt lingering, and I didn't feel safe to come out in person. So I actually called my parents over the phone. I was in Ohio and they were in Pennsylvania. And I told my parents at that point, I wasn't sure if I was like completely gay or if I was just bi or whatever, but I was like, I'm going to have to tell them. I'm just going to outright tell them, because I don't want to have to deal with anything later. So I was like, Dad, I like women, basically. And I don't remember what else happened, but I remember my mom was listening on the other line. Back in the day, for you young kids who don't know how house phones worked, you could pick up, and as long as you were real quiet, no one would know you're on the other line. But after I told my dad that, my mom said something, and it was a tense exchange, but she said, you're in the Lord's hands now. And then I ended up yelling back, that's the only place I ever wanted to be. And I hung up the phone and I was out. And it was terrifying. It was a great night. It was a crazy next day. But I share all that to say that my mom is one of the biggest people in my life now. And actually 10 years out after that happened, my mom heard a Conversations episode that I did, and she called and she apologized to me.
Wow.
And she said, I want you to know that I've never not loved you. I just thought that was the best way to love you. And so I think I really appreciate that you're sharing your dad's authentic voice, right? You're not neutering it and you're not filtering it through your experience. You're going to give him a voice, because listen, it's a tenuous relationship. But if I back out of a relationship with my parents, and if you back out of a relationship with your parents, first of all, we shouldn't have to divorce our heritage to be who we are. But second of all, they're never going to see that we're the same people they raised us to be.
Right.
Isn't that the irony of it? Is like they raised you to be this awesome, artistic, creative, free-thinking, strong-willed female that you are. And isn't it the greatest irony that that's turned back around and they're like, oh, crap, now she's, awesome and artistic and open-minded and free-thinking,
Right.
So I thank you for sharing that, because I think that's going to add a whole nother texture to the film. Just as someone who's going to be watching the film, that's like a personal element that draws you in terms of that. It's not just going to be scholarly. It's going to be personal. There's going to be a lot in there.
Yeah.
So,
It's definitely an academic, theological, but relational approach to,
I like that.
A tangible, not only tangible letters, but a tangible point mark in history to afford us an opportunity to go back, to reevaluate, to then look forward to see where we are now, So,
and how can we do this better? And what will this mean in terms of safe space for LGBTQ people in religious communities? Because there's a big difference between like toleration and acceptance, right? And we intend to be accepted and not tolerated, and we got to move forward towards that. So. Absolutely.
And we are, I know a lot of conservatives are scared right now. Some of them are really pissed off. But change is inevitable.
It is.
With this research, it's only going to help. It's only going to get better.
Have you gotten any feedback about the film? I know you're obviously still producing it, and it's going to be out in August. So you're still very much in the.
It won't be out in August.
Not in August. Okay.
No.
Okay. Do we know when we're looking at?
Everybody gets all these little pieces, and then all of a sudden, I read things on on Instagram, like the movie's coming out. Like where did they get that?
Where did that happen? What's our timetable we're looking at?
We
How
just
long do
started
I-
post-production. I mean, I was just able to raise enough money to hire a professional editor,
Okay.
you know, and that we're so fortunate to even have that. It's either time or money. I mean, I'm
Yes.
self-producing this. I'm an investor myself. I've maxed out too many credit cards and, you know, have downsized my life to, you know,
Yeah.
but with Jill being hired, Jill Woodward is her name, we hopefully can finish post-production by August.
Okay.
Submit to film festivals for a 2022 release. So we don't know what film festival we'll get into yet, and pending that release date, then people will be able to watch from that festival on, you know.
Gotcha.
So, but
Gotcha.
we'll know in the next, let's touch base in another like 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I'll have more answers for you if we're going to hit that end of August goal.
Perfect. I hope so. And I hope that we can help raise some awareness. You know what I mean? Like, this is a film that so many of us need, that it's there. I know there's gotta be people out there that can help. So we're going to try I'm going to try to keep putting it out there. You
Please
know what
do.
I mean? So.
There's a lot of ways that people can help. So again, it's either time or money, and it's a very expensive endeavor. So we were fortunate enough to find one company that is giving us their production services to help with post-production and assist with that. So they're saving us tens of thousands of dollars that, you know, it's just so hard to raise $500,000 to make a movie. And that's a very conservative budget.
Yeah.
You know? We have hundreds of hours of footage, you know, I mean, it'll be narrowed down obviously, but it's a documentary, you know, it's years of following the story. But yeah, so it's just those little milestones, one step at a time to get there.
So you said that conservatives are scared. Have you gotten any direct feedback? Like, what are you hearing back as this starts to seep out into the ether?
Well, just a lot of the responses we get on social media, the conservative voice, they're very righteous. And they, you know, there's no really room for dialogue. It's like they just know. A lot of people don't even watch the clip, or they're not even like, you know, one guy wanted to send me a whole bunch of research, and I was like, great, here's the email address. And he's like, okay, cool, give me a follow, I'll send it to you. And I was like, why are you even wasting my time? Like, do you want to look at the research that we have? I would love to look at the research you have. You know what I mean? So, but this is TikTok, so who knows who's behind those accounts. Right. But as far as like some of the pastors and theologians, I know that it's getting around in churches. I know it's being talked about. You know, I saw on Twitter the other day that somebody said to a famous pastor, hey, have you seen this before? And the famous pastor was like, I don't even see it. But I know this famous pastor knows about us because we invited him to be on the show, and that they said no, you know, and so I'm not going to call them out, but I should. But it's unfortunate. It's like, you know, debate us. Get in this conversation with us, you know, like
come to the conversation.
Books that are killing people. Like, talk to us, you know.
Yeah,
we're very approachable. We really, really just want to live, you know.
Just to live and be normal. Like, it's really not that fun to be gay. It's just pretty normal. Like, and for so long, it's just that we've been like these scapegoats and you know, just kind of held up as something that's truly an abomination in front of the church. And that's not okay. And then you have people that are gonna, you know, the whole thing with evangelicalism and stuff is that books sprouted up from nowhere, and people who have no idea about like gender studies or biology of 100%. Gender or biology of sex, they're writing books like Wild at Heart, and they're just completely saying, this is what you got to do to be a man. This is what you got to do to be this or that, with no research. So why are they looking down on you when you're coming with research?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's a lot of the stuff that we'll be able to show as well too. Good. You know, and it's just I just can't wait to get it done. Let me put it that way. I can't wait to show you all, you know. So the next couple of weeks are going to be really exciting as we start going through the footage. We've got already a writing room like meeting set up with the editor and one of our writers and, you know, an author that we really respect, and myself. So that's really exciting. But yeah, it's Kathy's work. If you guys don't know Kathy Boldock, you can already get an insight of some of her work. Just binge Kathy Boldock.
Just all of it. I did it on podcast form. Just do it.
Right.
For those of you who don't know, Kathy is LGBTQ ally. I believe she is a cis straight white woman who is a Christian.
Evangelical. Yeah. Christian.
and she saw the light. She saw the big rainbow light. But she really has been open about her own process of learning and accepting and understanding. And I did the same thing you were saying, like binge Kathy Baldock.
Yeah.
I definitely did that from the start. And that's how I found out about the film, actually, was between that. And then I saw a video of Mary Lambert promoting the film. So
love it.
Yeah, we're trying to get that out there. So are you guys going to be dropping any sort of sneak peeks or like little hints that we can nibble on?
We'll do more trailers and things like that and more promo stuff as we go. But I'm not sure yet, but I'd love to like at least send. And if anything, what we can do is if we know that there are some people that we filmed that won't be in the movie, we can at least start sharing some of those voices.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know.
You can't give it all away.
Exactly.
You can't give it all away, but like at the same time, we're dying for this.
I know. So we are giving away like, research online. Like our Instagram is a really good resource for that.
Yes.
We just posted on 1 Corinthians. We did the Romans passage. We just did a whole post on arsenokoitai. And actually an interesting thing that Christy Perdue, one of the authors that we're working with, points out in her book is that arsen and koitai are the two Greek words. Now you have to understand, right? The Bible, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, but it was translated into Greek, and that's what Paul used when he wrote the New Testament. And so he took these two Greek words from Leviticus, arsen and koitai, and conjoined them to mean arsen and koitai. And arsen means bed and koitai is man, or vice versa. Man, bed, bad men, whatever. Many men and many beds. And so the argument is that arsen and koitai are only used when it's men and men. That's not true. That's just not true. And so she points out these verses, one in Judges, one in, I don't know the other one off the top of my head, but it's on our slide on Instagram, and it's interesting how, again, none of the theologians on the opposite sides, it's Judges, it's Numbers 31, 17, 18, and Judges 21, 11, and 12. Nobody talks about it.
Nope.
So they either are, they're bad theologians either way. They either know about it and they're hiding it, or they don't know about it because they don't care enough about us to actually say, I don't think this is condemning gay people. Let me really look into this.
Absolutely. Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
They're bad theologians.
And the fact is that bad theology kills, and not just queer people, but brown people and disabled people and female-bodied people. Bad theology kills. Yep. I did a side-by-side video. It's back towards the beginning of my YouTube channel. Yes, Kevin Garcia. Oh my gosh, I love him. I have been following him so hard. I love you. You guys should just look up all these people. But I'm like a little bit of a nerd here in this subject matter. But I did a side by side with an evangelical minister where I talked about how I talked about the fact that the evangelical church is causing harm to a lot of people, basically just wanton harm, right? We're not worried. They're not worried about translation errors. They're just worried about perpetuating the same things they've already heard. Well, what happened is this evangelical minister, he found it, and apparently he felt like I was speaking just to him because he made a series of attack videos back at me. So this pastor made a whole sermon series, which, first of all, I'm very excited to have inspired 5 weeks of preaching at this person's church. But they made a whole sermon series about how it's wrong to be gay. And it was actually 5 sermons, but I didn't have that much time. So I made a side-by-side video. And just like you said, they're not willing to approach the conversation. So what I did was I took that sermon and I broke it down second by second by second to call out everything that was just bad logic, that was just false teaching, and that was just horrible translation and verses that didn't even relate, right? And the video was 2.5 hours and I was only 20 minutes into the sermon.
Wow.
And so
2.5 hours?
Yeah. Ugh. And it was just me. I would play a couple seconds and I would pause, and I had to watch that whole sermon and just to like call out those points. Online? It is. Yeah. I'll send you a link to it.
Yeah,
so
please do.
Yeah. And it's just, it's insane to me that we're just gonna keep doing that and allowing that in American society. It can't go on anymore, and that's why I think your work is so incredibly important, because it's gonna call some people to the floor in terms of accountability, and that's what we need. So
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, and if you have anybody else that I should watch, I'd love to, send me any sermons that you have that you think I should take a look at. That would actually really help in our gathering of materials.
Yeah.
And then also just research. We would be bad theologians and researchers and filmmakers if we didn't fully look at both sides and understand fully the argument, so.
Absolutely. Yeah, I will send them your way. There's a lot for those of you who are watching, wherever you're watching. If you go to YouTube, you can find us under Conversations Official, and we're also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you search back through, we've done quite a few episodes regarding LGBTQ people, transgender, issues, gender identity, all that stuff, and it's all available for you. So I'm gonna make sure I send it to you personally, so you don't have to do the dive, but it's all been trying to put it out there. So it has to happen, so it has to happen.
I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, is there anything else you want to say in closing? Anything you want to bait us in further with, or anything we should know about the film or how to support you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, just if you want to know more, follow us on all, social media. We're on all social media at 1946 the movie. To learn more, go to our website, 1946themovie.com. You can become a sponsor. You can buy a t-shirt to help us finish the movie. If you want to give on a larger level, we do have a fiscal sponsor. So we're a 501c3. You can make a charitable donation and get a full tax write-off. Yeah. And then, church sponsors, and there are other ways we can, corporate sponsors where we'll put, links on our websites and things like that. So there's more information. You can email us. Other than that, just share. Because, first of all, it's going to help because somebody's going to stumble across this, and we get messages all the time. Like, oh my gosh, like last night I was crying and this was happening and I felt my life was over. And then I stumbled upon your page and now I have a little bit of hope. I need to do a little bit more work. Let me look at this.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing for us. It's like, we're just presenting academic, theological material to get people to take a step back from their own privileged reality or their own oppressed reality to come to a place of love and acceptance and justice and the greatest commandments of all. And I'm not going to get all Jesus on you right now, but maybe I will. No, just kidding.
Maybe I will.
But it's really so simple. And so I'm just really excited to continue this work and continue to meet new people on both sides and just have, a greater future for us all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I have to say thank you so much for doing the work. I make sure you look up at 1946 the movie, just so for those of you who are watching, that'll help you find it a lot easier. If you would please like, comment, share everything possible with the movie. It's going to get it out there to the people who need it. And when I look into the camera and say like, this film would have been something that would have changed my whole life, I'm telling you, this film would have been something that would have changed my whole life. There are so many folks out here who need to hear this. And it's not just young folks. I live in a really small town, like 13,500 people taken down every year. And we had a Pride event 2 years ago. It would have been last summer because of COVID, but the year before that. And we had folks come out that were in their 70s and they were presenting as their authentic gender for the first time in their life.
Wow.
They left their house for the first time in their life in the clothes that felt right to them. And so there are so many people of all age brackets and demographics that need to hear this. And this is what's most important about this film is it's not an opinion piece.
Right.
It is a research, scholarly piece.
Right.
And we can't underestimate that. And like you said, we'd be bad theologians to try to disavow that fact. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to end on this too. My favorite thing about the Bible is that, whatever argument you want to, it's called proof texting, right? You can support whatever argument you want, but there's so many, forget about that. There's so many contradictions in the Bible. Whatever you pull toward any argument, you can find a Bible verse that contradicts it.
Yes.
And so just to that end, where Deuteronomy says not to dress in women's clothing, what do you think the coat of many colors was? That word for Joseph's coat is only used twice in the Bible. And the only other time it's used is when it's describing a princess's robe. He's a cross-dresser. He's probably gay, which is why he's picked on by his brothers,
Boom.
And so we have to be really careful. And that's just one example. There's
just
many,
one.
And so we're going to pick and choose which ones, I mean, not pick and choose as far as like proof texting, but what are the strongest ones that will support this work. And then beyond that, besides we'll show we'll have hopefully all the other resources available on other sites. So
Absolutely.
It's not picking and choosing. It's all there.
It's all there
for the film.
Yeah. And we're not trying to make this like a 10-hour mini series here, right?
It's already hard enough cutting down Kathy's work because her conferences were like 6 hours.
For sure. And that's just her work. You know what I mean? So. Yeah. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Rocky. I appreciate your story personally, and I appreciate the story that you are telling through this film. I'm definitely going to do put my biggest effort at getting this out there and help in any way possible. And thank you to you, thank you to the crew, and thank you for coming on Conversations.
Thank you for having me. I'll see you next time.
Yep. Have a good day.
All right. Bye.
Bye. This has been the Conversations Podcast. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions or comments or just want to get involved, feel free to join the conversation on social media. You can find us at Conversations Official on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And please don't forget to rate, follow, and share this podcast. We're available on Anchor, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining the conversation.